Hey, what's up, everybody? It's time. I got the glasses on. It's another reading with Rob. And if it feels like I just did one, I did. But this book was really quick. And it was good. So let's get it in frame here. It's called The Message, Ta-Nehisi Coates. If you're not familiar with Ta-Nehisi Coates, he's written a few real bestsellers, Between the World and Me, which I'll probably read next because I really like his writing. He is really cool. So there we go. Can't see it. Come on. Here we go. There we go. The Message, Ta-Nehisi Coates. Why was I drawn to The Message? Well, it was controversial. Somebody, I forget who it was, one of the networks, interviewed him and had to apologize and walk back some of their questions because apparently, well, let's just say it was about Israel. So it got very heated and controversial, and someone touched that third rail that you can't talk about except in certain terms. If there's any censorship around right now, it's because of Israel and the war that's going on in the Middle East. To do so is to risk being called one thing or another, right? And because there's so much history here, I have not commented on it because I think it would be stupid to talk about something that I'm not fully versed on, to offer an opinion on things that I know not enough about. Though people do it all the time, I do not agree with it. There's nothing I hate worse than being lectured about Ukraine about some idiot, simpleton who knows nothing about Ukraine and the conflict there. And they don't even do it in humility. They do it with so much certitude, which I think is what's frustrating about our online world right now. Everybody's got an opinion, but very few are qualified opinions. So I will continue with that tradition, except for the context of talking about this book. So when I saw the interview, I was like, this is something I want to learn more about. I'm going to read because I had wanted to visit the area of at least the West Bank and Israel and Lebanon. That was on my going to get to list before all this happened and all this tragedy. And so by reading, well, first of all, the message, Ta-Nehisi Coates, I hope I'm saying his name correctly, is a great writer. I love his writing. It's very introspective. It touches you. It's beautiful. It's poetic. I guess that's why he's a best-selling author. But this particular book almost reads like a travel book. It covers basically two areas. So he went in the first part of the book, he visited Dakar. And that's somewhere that I was thinking, you know what? I should go there because it's on the beach. It's beautiful and it's Africa. It's West Africa. And I've been to West Africa and I love West Africa. Now, granted, I haven't looked at Senegal in a while to see what's going on there, but by reading his book, I got a much better view of what it would be like to travel there. Now, for Ta-Nehisi, who is African American, I think he's from Baltimore, it had special meaning, which will be very different from my trip. But it was a pilgrimage of sorts for him. But it gave me a good sense of that. And he ties it into his personal experience. And as I said, very self reflective and beautifully written. I hope someday I could write something like that. The second part of the book deals with his trip to Israel and Palestine. And this was before the October 7th attack in Israel. But Netanyahu was president. And I think at the time he was doing this, he was trying to overhaul the judiciary, which there were a lot of protests in the streets. And, the thing that I found after October 7th, and then Netanyahu unleashed all this force into Gaza that killed, of course, the terrorists, but also killed a lot of innocent women and children and civilians as well. Dense populated area. They say, well, collateral damage. Well, how much collateral damage is acceptable? And that's the question here. I'm not answering this question. I'm asking the question, what's acceptable? How many children? And if children are being killed, does it matter the color of their skin or their religion? Because to some people, it seems to. And that's what concerns me about all of this. It has religious and racist overtones, which is that if you're white and you're Christian, then, and Israel, of course, has Old Testament roots that really call to evangelicals for some reason. They've really, deepened those ties recently. My view of evangelical Christianity, I grew up very religious in that environment, is you have no moral high ground at this point in time of any kind, of any kind. You have ceded all moral high ground by your actions the past 12 years, in particular now, and what you've done, and the hatred that you have unleashed. So when it comes to Israel and Palestine, I do see nuance, and I do see that this book offers a very clear perspective that I believe more people should read. Not because I believe that it's 100% accurate or correct, I don't know, but because I believe it's accurate and correct for the author. And that's where critical thinking comes in. And for me, I'm reading the book and I'm like, interesting point. I want to see the counterpoint. More importantly, I want to go. I want to see for myself. So this book was very inspiring to me in that regard. I hope I get a chance to finally go. I hope there's peace soon. I have a feeling it might happen after January 20th, 2025, because they haven't been incentivized for peace until then. You can read into that what you will. But what is happening there is a lot of bloodshed and a lot of misery. And it's been expanded, of course, to Lebanon. And it does touch what's going on in Ukraine. When people try to compare the two, they're apples and oranges. Ukraine never had a terrorist organization working within their ranks, though Putin tried to say they were Nazis. It's absurd. And they never attacked Russia. And they never, of course, if you don't have terrorists, they can't hide amongst the civilians. It's also not a dense urban environment, but large landmass with dense urban environments. So the parallels are not really there, though people try to reach them and use one to criticize the other. I think that's a mistake, but I think it's also a mistake to say that they have nothing to do with each other. And the parallels that I see are more along the lines of war criminality is war criminality, regardless of who is committing it, regardless of who is committing it. Children dying are children dying, regardless of their skin color and regardless of their religion. I don't care, and you shouldn't either. And most good people of conscience should not. And the whole Old Testament thread to evangelical Christianity can mean I don't care about that either. I don't care. That doesn't justify killing children. It never should, pro-lifers. These children are here today being loved by families, and they're being murdered by state governments, and that's never acceptable. Whether we're talking about in Ukraine, whether we're talking about in Palestine, in Gaza, or in Lebanon, or anywhere else, it's not acceptable. This book is a good read for anybody who wants to begin, like me, to understand the many, many nuances. This is just the beginning of my journey. The brain cells are just beginning to think in this direction. So we're at the beginning of a journey, not the end. I have not made up my mind about anything other than the fact that I am convinced that on occasion, the oppressed can become the oppressor. And we have to guard against that. We have to guard against that. It's a good book. Check it out. If you believe that you can't read a book like this because it would screw with your thinking, then I would say look in the mirror and see if you're thinking correctly, because it sounds like you're dogmatic and ideological and not open to new information. And that, my friends, is something that is very, very dangerous. Thank you.